cold wind blows through the fields as the sun sets behind the endless horizon of corn stalks. The vast emptiness of the Nebraska countryside stretches for miles, with nothing but flat land and occasional barns dotting the landscape. It's here, on the forgotten stretch of Route 76, that something sinister lurks. The locals call it the Killer Highway, but not because of the usual stories of car accidents or reckless drivers. No. The fear surrounding this road runs much deeper. Something far darker has made this stretch of highway its home. If you've ever driven through Nebraska, you've likely heard whispers of this cursed road, a highway where drivers vanish without a trace, where eerie sounds echo in the night, and where strange shadows move in the corners of your vision. Route 76 might seem like any other road in the heart of America at first glance. It's a simple highway, 2 lanes, surrounded by fields, stretching across the plains of Nebraska, far from the distractions of modern life. But once the sun begins to dip below the horizon, the highway takes on a different feel. The open sky, once bright and welcoming, becomes oppressive, swallowing everything in darkness. The wind picks up, rustling the cornfields in a strange terror, almost whispering sound, as if the earth itself is trying to speak. It's this time of night, when the world falls silent, that travelers along Route 76 often report the most bizarre and terrifying experiences. Local legend has it that the highway is cursed, haunted by something more ancient and powerful than anything that could be explained by science. The first reports of strange occurrences date back to the late 1800s, when settlers first ventured into the area. They say the land was once home to a powerful and secretive cult that performed dark rituals in the fields under the cover of darkness. The cult, rumored to have been searching for immortality, believed that by making sacrifices and invoking ancient spirits, they could gain control over the very land itself. But as with all things born from darkness, their ambition came at a terrible cost. The rituals went wrong, and something ancient, something that should have stayed buried, was awakened. From that night on, the highway became a place of death and despair. The first strange disappearances started shortly after that. It's said that anyone who passed through the area at night, particularly those who were alone, would never be seen again. At first, it was just a few lost souls, vanishing into thin air without a trace, their cars found abandoned at the side of the road. But as the years went on, the stories became more widespread. People would hear strange noises, like footsteps behind them, whispers in the wind, and the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing coming from the darkness. Some claimed to see figures standing at the edge of the highway, watching them as they drove by. But when they looked back in their mirrors, the figures were gone, replaced by an unsettling emptiness. The scariest part, no one could ever explain where these people went. No bodies were ever found. No signs of struggle. It was as if they had simply vanished into the night, swallowed up by the road itself. The local authorities did their best to investigate, but every time they looked into one of these disappearances, they found nothing. No clues, no evidence, nothing to explain the inexplicable. As the years passed, the highway became even more notorious. Stories of ghostly apparitions and eerie occurrences grew more frequent. One of the most chilling tales involves a young couple who were traveling along Route 76 one stormy night in the 1960s. They were on their way to a family gathering, just like hundreds of other people who had driven this road. But as they passed through the area, their car suddenly stalled. The rain poured down, and the wind howled through the cornfields. They tried to start the car, but it wouldn't budge. Panic began to set in, and the couple decided to leave the car behind and seek help at a nearby farmhouse. They walked along the side of the road for what seemed like hours, but no farmhouse ever came into view. Instead, they stumbled upon an old, abandoned shack hidden deep in the woods, a place they'd never seen before. It was in this shack that they discovered something horrifying. Sacrificial symbols carved into the walls. Remnants of what looked like old ritual offerings. And a feeling of pure dread in the air. The couple fled in terror, but when they made it back to the road, their car was gone. No sign of the car. No tire tracks. Nothing. Just an empty stretch of highway under the rain-soaked sky. Another account from the late 1980s tells of a trucker who was making his nightly route through Nebraska. He had driven along Route 76 countless times before, but this night was different. As he neared the middle of the highway, he began to feel uneasy, as though something was watching him. His truck's lights flickered, and the temperature inside the cab dropped suddenly, despite the warm night air. He looked in his rear-view mirror and saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure standing in the middle of the road, slowly walking toward him. He slammed on the brakes, but the figure was gone. Heart racing, he sped up, trying to shake the fear that had gripped him. But no matter how fast he drove, the figure kept appearing in the mirror, getting closer and closer, until the trucker finally reached a point where he could no longer take it. He pulled over, his hands shaking, and when he looked back, but the trucker couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been following him had never really left. Over the years, these types of stories have become more than just ghost tales. They've become warnings. People who've traveled Route 76 in the dead of night talk about hearing whispers on the wind, seeing strange flickers of light in the distance, and feeling a presence that seems to follow them, even when there's no one else around. Some say that the very road itself is alive, a dark, twisted entity that thrives on fear and despair, feeding off the souls of those who wander too far into its grasp. And then there are the signs, those strange, eerie markers that seem to appear out of nowhere. Some say they've seen old, faded road signs, warning of imminent danger, signs that weren't there the day before. Others speak of a mysterious message scrawled on a sign in a language they couldn't understand, one that seems to change every time they look away, as if the highway itself is trying to communicate, to warn drivers to turn back before it's too late. So, what's really going on with Route 76? Is it just a spooky highway with a dark past, or is there something more? The truth is, no one really knows. But one thing is for certain. If you're ever driving through Nebraska and find yourself on this road, don't stop. Don't get out. And whatever you do, don't look in your rearview mirror. You might just find something staring back at you that shouldn't be there. Something that's been waiting for you, patiently, for a very long time. The stories, the disappearances, the sightings, they all add up to one thing. There's something terribly wrong with Route 76. Something that no one can explain, and something that might just be waiting for you. This expanded version builds on the eerie atmosphere of Route 76, offering more detail and depth to the legend while maintaining the sense of mystery and terror that makes it a chilling urban legend. A legend of Route 76 stretches far back in time, well before the first car ever rolled down its dusty road. In fact, the history of this highway is shrouded in mystery and fear that predates modern travel. The land was always considered strange, even in the late 1800s. Back then, the road was nothing more than a barely visible path cutting through miles of barren, isolated land, surrounded by cornfields and thick patches of untamed forests. The locals of that time were already familiar with the eerie reputation the area held. There were whispers about strange happenings and sightings, something not quite right about the place. It was during these years that the first reports of strange figures appeared, figures that weren't easily explained away. These figures, people said, were not human at all. They weren't travelers or wanderers passing through the area. No, these figures were different. They had the appearance of people, but there was something terribly wrong about them. Some described them as having hollow eyes, dressed in tattered clothing that looked as though it had been rotting for decades. They weren't seen walking along the roads like ordinary travelers. Rather, they seemed to materialize out of thin air, often appearing in the most unexpected of places. The most unsettling detail, however, was that these figures did not speak. They would silently stand at the edge of the road or in the fields, staring with an unnatural stillness that made anyone who laid eyes on them uneasy. Those brave enough to approach only to be greeted by silence and emptiness would often leave the area feeling like something had followed them, a presence just behind them that they could not escape. At first, people thought these sightings were just the result of an overactive imagination, but the strange occurrences persisted. It wasn't long before the local community realized something was seriously wrong. There were rumors that the highway was cursed and that the spirits of the dead roamed the land, restless and angry, forever tied to this stretch of road. And the truth behind this dark curse, they came to learn, went much deeper than anyone could have anticipated. The story begins with a cult, a secret society that emerged in the late 1800s, led by a group of men and women who were desperate for power and control over the land. They believed that the road itself, the land surrounding it, was special, imbued with ancient energies that could be harnessed by those with the right knowledge. The cult wasn't just looking for power in the typical sense. They were after something far darker. They were looking for immortality, and they believed they could achieve it by summoning a powerful demon that would give them control over the earth. They had spent years studying ancient texts and performing forbidden rituals, determined to unlock the secrets hidden in the land. The highway, they believed, was the key. It was a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was thinner, a location where ancient rituals could be performed with the greatest chance of success. Under the cover of darkness, the cult would gather in the fields near the road, performing their ceremonies deep in the heart of the land. They wore strange robes, their faces hidden beneath masks that obscured their identities. With each ritual, they grew bolder, believing they were gaining more power with every passing moon. Their ceremonies became more elaborate, involving strange chants and sacrifices. The locals would hear the sounds of drums beating late at night, the eerie sound echoing through the trees. Some claimed they could feel the very earth trembling beneath their feet, as though the land itself was responding to the cult's dark summons. But the cult had miscalculated. They had underestimated the forces they were trying to control. In their arrogance, they thought they could control the demon they sought to summon, that they could use its power for their own gain. However, the ritual went horribly wrong. Instead of binding the demon to their will, they unleashed it, freeing it from the underworld and allowing it to roam the land. The demon a being of darkness and destruction, tore through the land, leaving behind chaos and death. It was said to have consumed the souls of the cult members, devouring them in the very place they had tried to summon it. But the demon did not leave. It remained on the land, feeding off the fear and sorrow it had created. The curse, as the locals soon realized, was born from that very moment. The moment the demon was unleashed and the land became its domain. From that point on, Route 76 was no longer just a road. It became a cursed highway, a path where the dead roamed free. The spirits of the cult members, consumed by their own mistake, were trapped in a purgatory-like existence. They were said to wander the road, their souls forever bound to the place they had called upon the demon. The land became a place where the living and the dead could no longer be separated. People who traveled the highway began to notice strange occurrences, whispers carried by the wind, shadows that flickered in the corners of their eyes, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. And then came the disappearances. Locals who ventured too far into the fields or along the highway at night never returned. The road seemed to devour them as if it were hungry for their souls. The highway became infamous, a place whispered about in fear and dread. Travelers who knew better steered clear of Route 76, warning others to do the same. But as with all things dark and mysterious, the legend grew stronger over the years. It was no longer just a story passed down by word of mouth. It became a warning, a reminder that some places should never be explored, and some forces should never be disturbed. As decades passed, the highway's dark reputation only grew. The spirits still bound to the land were said to be restless, seeking vengeance for their dark deeds. They would appear to travelers in the form of shadowy figures, watching from the fields or standing at the side of the road. Some said they could hear voices whispering their names, beckoning them to stop and investigate. Others reported seeing headlights approaching in the distance, only for the lights to disappear into the fog before reaching them. It was as though the road was alive, pulling people in and never letting them go. But Curse of Route 76 became more than just a local legend. It became a symbol of the danger that lies in tampering with powers beyond comprehension. The cult, in their desire for immortality, had unlocked a terrible force that no one could control. The demon they had summoned still roams the land, and the souls of the lost remain trapped in the fields, forever seeking release. The highway remains a haunted place, a reminder of the price that must be paid when darkness is invited into the world. As the years went on, Route 76 continued to claim its victims. The mystery of the highway deepened with every disappearance, with every eerie encounter, and the legend of the cursed road grew stronger.
Some say the demon is still there, waiting for the next unwitting traveler to cross its path. And to this day, no one truly knows what lurks in the shadows of Route 76. Only that those who pass through it should never, ever look back.
The whispers about Route 76 were always just that, whispers. They were stories told by old-timers at the local diner, murmured over campfires and passed down from one generation to the next. But it wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that those whispers became something far darker. The stories that had once been considered mere legend turned into something much more chilling when people began to disappear one by one. At first, it was just a few odd disappearances. A trucker traveling through, a couple on a road trip, even a lone hitchhiker trying to catch a ride to the next town. All of them were seen on Route 76, heading down the long, empty stretch of road as the sun began to set. And then, without a trace, they were gone. No one could explain it. No one could figure out where they had gone or why they had vanished without a single sound. It was as though they had simply disappeared into the very air itself. There were no signs of struggle, no tire marks left on the road, not even a flicker of headlights in the distance. Just an eerie silence that hung in the air, thick and suffocating.
In the days that followed, the missing people's cars were found, abandoned at the side of the road. But the keys were always left in the ignition, as if they had been dropped carelessly by their owners in the heat of a moment. There was no sign that anyone had been harmed or that anything had gone wrong. The cars were just left there, with nothing but the empty, desolate highway stretching out before them. The locals began to notice a pattern. The disappearances weren't random. They were always happening along the same stretch of road, at the same time of night. It didn't take long for people to start saying it out loud. The thing that had been whispered for years. It's the highway. It's cursed. But what was even more terrifying than the unexplained disappearances was the fact that no one could ever find a trace of the missing people. They were gone. Just gone. Like the wind had taken them, or they had slipped through the cracks of reality itself. And what made it worse was that there was no immediate warning. 1 minute, a driver would be cruising down Route 76, the radio softly playing in the background, the world moving along as it always did. And then the next, nothing. No sign that anything was wrong. It was as if they had stepped off the face of the earth and vanished into thin air. There was no explanation, no logical reason why people were disappearing on this particular stretch of road. The police were baffled. Investigations went nowhere. No footprints. No evidence of foul play. No signs that anyone had been taken. There were no witnesses, and no one could find a single shred of evidence that could explain why these people had just vanished. The missing drivers weren't the only ones to feel the eerie chill of the road. People who had driven the highway late at night began to report strange feelings of being watched, of a presence that seemed to follow them, no matter how fast they drove. One of the most chilling accounts came from a couple who were traveling from Omaha to Lincoln on a cold November night. They had been driving for hours, the road stretching endlessly ahead of them. The couple was just beginning to talk about stopping for the night when they noticed something unusual. A car in the distance. It was just parked on the side of the road, its lights dim and the engine still running. As they got closer, they could see a man standing next to the car, looking down at the ground. His face was obscured by the shadows, but something about him felt off. The couple slowed down, unsure of what to do. The man didn't acknowledge their presence, didn't even look up as they passed him. They figured he was just having car trouble, but as they drove on, the man's figure seemed to loom in their rearview mirror, just standing there, unmoving. They glanced back at the road ahead, and when they looked back again, the man was gone. The car was still parked on the side of the road, but the figure was nowhere to be seen. A week later, that same car was found. The couple had heard about it on the news. The same car, parked along the highway. The engine was still running. The keys were in the ignition. But there was no sign of the driver. He had simply vanished. Just like the others. His name was never found. No identification. The mystery deepened, and the town grew more fearful. People began to stay off Route 76 after dark, knowing full well that something wasn't right. Something was out there, hidden in the shadows of that long, lonely stretch of highway. The disappearance of these travelers wasn't just a series of isolated incidents. It became a pattern that no one could ignore. People spoke of strange occurrences in the area. Flickering headlights, shadows moving in the corners of their eyes, the overwhelming feeling of being followed. But most terrifying of all were the whispers, soft, barely audible, like someone calling your name, only for the voice to disappear before you could turn around. As the disappearances continued, the local authorities could only do so much. They set up checkpoints, searched the area, and conducted interviews with locals who had traveled the road. But every time they investigated, they came up empty. Nothing was ever found. No bodies, no clues, just abandoned cars, their engines still running, and keys in the ignition. It wasn't long before people started to speculate. Was it the work of a serial killer? Was someone using the highway as a hunting ground? But then, no one could explain why so many people from all walks of life had disappeared without a single trace. And the worst part, the people who had vanished never even had a chance to defend themselves. It was as if the highway itself was alive, pulling people in, trapping them in a silent, cold grip that they couldn't escape. The stories spread across Nebraska, growing more sinister with each passing year. Route 76 became a place of fear, a road you dared not travel after dark. Parents warned their children not to go near it. Drivers who had never seen the highway before felt an unexplainable dread when they found themselves on it. And in the dark corners of the towns near the highway, the old stories still lingered, passed down from one generation to the next. Locals would tell you, in hushed tones, that the disappearances weren't random. They would say, with certainty, that it was the highway itself, something dark, something ancient, calling out to those who traveled its path. The people who vanished didn't just disappear. They were taken, pulled into the very heart of the land, and those who were left behind were haunted by the knowledge that they might be next. The stories continued to grow, and the mystery of Route 76 deepened. Was it truly a cursed road, or was something more sinister at work? And in the years to come, there would be many more. For decades, Route 76 in Nebraska has been the subject of many eerie tales, but none more chilling than the stories of ghostly sightings that have been reported along the road, particularly on foggy nights. It was the kind of thing that would make your heart race and send a shiver down your spine. Travelers, especially those unfamiliar with the highway, would often find themselves driving through the dense fog that seemed to roll in from nowhere. It would hang in the air, thick and suffocating, enveloping the road and making it nearly impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. And that was when the first signs of something unnatural would appear. People claim to see figures standing at the edge of the road, silent and still, their forms barely visible through the mist. At first, drivers would assume these were just people stranded or hitchhiking, but something about them didn't sit right. There was a stillness to the figures that made the hair on the back of their necks stand up. These figures didn't wave or move. They just stood there, staring. Many described them as being dressed in old, torn clothing, clothes that looked as if they had been weathered by years of use, long before the modern era. But what made them truly terrifying were their eyes. Hollow, empty eyes, staring straight ahead as if they were waiting for something, or perhaps someone. The look in their eyes was described as both haunting and unnerving. It wasn't the look of a living person. It was the stare of something that had long since lost its humanity. One of the most common stories told by those who've driven along Route 76 is of a man seen standing by the side of the road. His appearance was always the same: old, tattered clothes, a worn hat, and eyes that seemed to pierce through the fog as though they could see straight into your soul.
Drivers would describe seeing him just moments before they passed by, always standing in the same spot. But as soon as they passed, the figure would vanish. It was as though he never existed at all. But then, something even more unsettling would happen. The drivers would glance in their rear view mirrors, and the man would be gone. At first, they'd think it was just their imagination, but the feeling would stay with them, the sensation that something wasn't quite right. And then, as they drove further down the road, they'd glance again, only to find the man standing just feet away from their car, his hollow eyes still staring, his face barely. The most terrifying part wasn't the sighting itself. It was the sudden realization that the figure was following them. No matter how fast they drove, no matter how far they went, the man seemed to be right there, always just behind them, never letting them escape his gaze. Some drivers would speed up, trying to outrun the sensation, but every time they looked in the mirror, the figure was closer. When they would finally stop to catch their breath, they would look around, and the figure would be gone. But the unease would linger, long after they left Route 76 behind. The sensation of being followed by something that shouldn't be there would stay with them, often leaving them with nightmares or a deep, unshakable fear. What made these sightings even more unnerving was the consistency of the reports. Over the years, many people traveling Route 76 at night or in the early morning hours had similar experiences. It wasn't just one or two isolated incidents. It was a pattern, something that had been happening for decades. The stories were passed from person to person, becoming more and more detailed as the years went by, and while some might have dismissed them as simple coincidences or overactive imaginations, the sheer volume of similar reports gave them an undeniable weight. It wasn't just one person seeing things. It was hundreds, maybe even thousands of drivers, each with their own version of the same chilling experience. Some said the ghostly figure was the spirit of someone who had once traveled Route 76 and never made it out. Others claimed he was the spirit of a lost soul who had been killed in some horrific accident, or worse, someone who had vanished along the highway in the mysterious disappearances that had plagued the road for decades. No one knew for sure, but the man in the fog had become a symbol of the highway's dark past, a reminder that something was wrong with this stretch of road, something that could never be explained away. There were other sightings too. People claimed to see more figures, sometimes as many as 4 or 5, standing together, shrouded in the fog, looking out into the distance,
with vacant eyes. Some travelers spoke of seeing children, too, playing on the side of the road, their laughter echoing eerily through the mist. But when they would slow down to offer help or just to look closer, the children would disappear, their giggles fading into the night like they had never been there at all. It wasn't just the figures that made these sightings so terrifying. It was the overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to accompany them. Those who had encountered these ghostly beings often described an overwhelming feeling of being watched, even when they couldn't see anyone around them. The air would grow heavy, thick with an unseen presence, and the sound of the wind would shift, becoming almost like a whisper, as if the very road itself was trying to speak. Some drivers would report hearing voices, soft and unintelligible at first. But as they listened, the voices grew louder, as if they were calling out to them from the fog. But no matter how hard they looked, they couldn't see where the voices were coming from. Many of the ghostly sightings happened on foggy nights when visibility was low and the road stretched out like an endless black ribbon, disappearing into the night. The fog seemed to add an extra layer of mystery to the whole experience, making everything feel more surreal. It was as though the fog itself was hiding something that wasn't meant to be seen, as if the figures in the mist were trying to show themselves to you, but only at the last moment, when you were already too far past to turn back. For some, the figure in the fog was merely a fleeting image, a strange moment they would eventually dismiss as a trick of the mind. But for others, it was an encounter that left a lasting impact, one that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. There were stories of people who would never drive Route 76 again, too terrified to even speak about what they had seen. And those who did, they would speak in hushed tones, as if acknowledging the figure somehow made it more real, more powerful. They would say with fear in their eyes that Route 76 wasn't just a highway. It was something far more sinister, a place where the boundary between the living and the dead was blurred, and the ghosts that roamed it were never at rest. The more people talked about it, the more the stories began to pile up. And as the decades passed, it became clear that something much darker was at work on Route 76. The ghostly sightings weren't just the product of an overactive imagination. They were a real, terrifying phenomenon that could not be explained. For those brave enough to venture down that road, the figures would continue to watch, waiting for the next unsuspecting traveler to cross their path. And for those who drove too close, there was always the feeling that no matter how far they went, the figures would always be just behind them, lurking in the fog, waiting for the right moment to step forward and make their presence known. There are many strange aspects to Route 76, but perhaps the most bizarre and unnerving element of this infamous highway lies in the road signs. They are unlike any you would expect to see on a normal stretch of road. These signs seem out of place, almost as if they were put there by some invisible hand. Signs that shouldn't exist. Signs that shouldn't be there at all. And for those who have traveled down this cursed path, these signs are more than just odd markers. They are symbols of something far darker. Some of the signs are said to have warnings written in languages that no one understands. The letters appear to be twisted, ancient symbols resembling something that doesn't belong to any modern language. When drivers see these signs, they often find themselves feeling a creeping sense of dread, unsure of what to make of the strange, indecipherable words. Some have tried to take pictures of these signs, hoping to study them later, but the images always turn out blurry, the words fading from the photo as if the camera itself is trying to reject them. It's as if the road doesn't want anyone to truly understand what's written there. Or maybe it's just another layer of the highway's strange magic. There are also reports of certain signs changing when they aren't being looked at. Travelers swear that when they glance at a sign while driving, it appears normal, just like any other highway marker. But when they look back a moment later, the sign has completely altered its message. Some drivers have described seeing a harmless speed limit 55 sign, only to have it transform into a cryptic warning that sends shivers down their spine. One of the most terrifying accounts comes from a man who swears he saw a sign that said, "Stop, turn back now," only for it to change to something far worse, something more unsettling. "You will not escape." The sign was gone in an instant, as if it had never been there at all. But the feeling that it had been real lingered long after the driver had passed it. The most notorious sign on Route 76 is a faded, almost forgotten marker that many drivers claim to have seen at some point along their journey. The sign is small, barely noticeable, tucked away in the shadows of the trees, almost like it's trying to hide. It reads, "Turn back, you're not alone." To most, these words would seem like a vague warning, an eerie sentiment meant to get people's imaginations running wild. But for those who have seen it, the meaning runs much deeper. The sign appears at random, when the traveler least expects it. Some claim that it doesn't show up at all until you've already passed a certain point on the highway. One moment, you're driving along, thinking you're close to safety, and the next, you see that chilling message on the side of the road. It's as if the highway itself is telling you that you're not going to make it, that there's something waiting for you, something that will follow you. Something that doesn't want you to leave. But the horror doesn't stop there. Some drivers have reported trying to leave Route 76, convinced that they've seen enough, convinced that they've had enough of the strange signs and eerie feelings that come with driving this haunted road. They pull off to the side, ready to turn onto a small, seemingly innocent side road, hoping to escape the madness that is Route 76. But as they make their turn, they find themselves right back where they started, back on the highway. No matter how many turns they make, no matter how many times they try to take a new path, the road keeps bringing them back. It's as if the road itself has a mind of its own, one that doesn't want anyone to leave, one that traps them in its never-ending loop. Drivers who've experienced this phenomenon often find themselves feeling trapped, unable to escape the cursed road, no matter how hard they try. The sense of helplessness that comes with realizing the road is actively keeping you there is enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. Some people say that when you try to take one of these side roads, the world around you begins to shift. The air grows heavier, more suffocating, and the landscape begins to change, just a little bit at a time. The cornfields seem to grow taller. The trees become darker, and the shadows seem to move on their own. The road itself becomes winding, twisting in ways that don't make sense, as if it's leading you somewhere you're not supposed to go. The further you drive, the more lost you become, until you realize that you're back on Route 76, the very place you were trying to escape. The signs that were once miles behind you now appear again, almost as if they followed you, mocking your attempt to flee. It's a maddening experience, one that leaves dry. And then there's the matter of the missing signs. There are stories of signs that appear one day, only to vanish the next, leaving behind nothing but an empty space where they once stood. One of the creepiest reports involves a group of friends who were driving down Route 76 late one night. They swore they saw a sign up ahead, one that had a strange symbol on it, a symbol none of them could recognize. The sign was completely new, as if it had just been put up, and it was glowing faintly in the darkness. But when they passed the sign, it was gone. Not just faded or weathered, but completely absent. The next morning, when they returned to the area, they couldn't find the sign, no matter how hard they searched. They couldn't even find the spot where it had stood. It was as if the sign had been erased from existence, as if it had never been there at all. The experience left them shaken, and they couldn't stop talking about it for weeks.
The more you hear about the strange road signs along Route 76, the more you begin to understand that these signs are more than just simple markers. They are messages. They're warnings, and they're meant to confuse, to disorient, and to trap you
in the highway's strange grip. Whether they appear as cryptic symbols or as unsettling phrases, these signs play a crucial role in the mystery of Route 76. They seem to have a life of their own. Yes, a power that can bend reality and make you question what's real and what isn't. Some people believe the signs are a way for the highway to communicate with those who travel it, a way for it to remind them that they're not alone and that escape is impossible. Over time, the signs have become part of the legend of Route 76, adding an extra layer of fear to an already terrifying road. They've become symbols of the unknown, reminders that no matter how hard you try to leave, the highway will always be there, waiting to bring you back. For those who have experienced the haunting presence of these signs, it's clear that Route 76 is not just a road. It's something far darker. Something that doesn't want you to escape its grasp. The road is alive, and it's trying to tell you something. And no matter how far you run, the signs will always be there, lurking in the fog, waiting for the next unsuspecting traveler to come and read their cryptic message. Route 76 has become infamous, not only in Nebraska, but across the United States, as a place where the lines between reality and the supernatural blur. For years, the highway has been the subject of countless stories, each one more unsettling than the last. But no one really knows what's going on with Route 76. Is it cursed, as many believe? Or is it simply the birthplace of a chilling urban legend, twisted over time by those who've experienced its horrors? Some say it's the work of a dark, ancient force that has claimed this land, feeding on the fear and confusion of anyone brave enough to travel its path. Others claim it's the souls of the lost, wandering for eternity, trapped in the place where they disappeared. Whatever the truth may be, there's no denying that Route 76 is a road filled with secrets that no one can fully understand. Many who have ventured down this stretch of highway never return, leaving behind only their empty cars and the haunting memories of their final moments. It's not just an isolated event, it's a pattern, one that has spanned decades, with countless people vanishing without a trace. What's even more terrifying is that there seems to be no rhyme or reason behind these disappearances. The victims come from all walks of life, travelers, truckers, families, even locals who know the area well. Some of them are never seen again, while others are found. The idea that Route 76 could be cursed is one that many people hold close to their hearts, and they're not alone. There are rumors that the land itself is cursed, that the very soil beneath the highway has absorbed something dark and malevolent. This theory is often linked to the ancient rituals that are said to have taken place long ago, when a cult seeking to gain control over the land invoked powers beyond their comprehension. They weren't prepared for the consequences of their actions, and the price they paid was more than they could ever have imagined. Some believe that the curse of Route 76 is a direct result of their dark dealings, a lingering mark left on the earth, an energy that refuses to let go.
Then there's the belief in the supernatural, the idea that there's something more than just a curse at work. There's talk of an ancient entity, a being that has been watching over the road for centuries, feeding on the fear and confusion of those who dare to cross its path. This entity, some claim, is not of this world. It is older than anything humanity can comprehend, a force that thrives on darkness and despair. It's said to be a watcher, quietly observing the travelers who pass through, waiting for the right moment to strike. Some believe that this entity is the one responsible for the strange happenings on the highway, the ghostly figures, the unsettling road signs, the feeling of being followed. Others believe that the entity controls the very road itself, twisting its path and trapping those who venture too far. Whether or not the entity truly exists is unclear, but the stories persist, growing with each passing year. But perhaps the most chilling possibility is that the souls of those who have been lost to the highway are still out there, forever wandering, trapped in a limbo between this world and the next. These souls, some say, are cursed to roam the road for eternity, waiting for the chance to claim more victims. Their spirits are said to be drawn to the highway, unable to escape the place where they met their untimely end. They wander the fields, standing at the side of the road, staring into the distance, hoping that someone will stop and give them the attention they crave. Some travelers claim to have seen these lost souls, their eyes hollow and empty, their faces twisted in sorrow. These figures, often seen on foggy nights, are said to be the spirits of those who have disappeared over the years, forever trapped in the place where they vanished. There are even accounts of people who, after passing these ghostly figures, feel an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they are being followed. When they glance in their mirrors, they see nothing, but when they look again, the figure is closer, standing just feet away from their car. It's as if the lost souls are reaching out, trying to make contact with the living, pulling them into the same fate that they themselves endured. Some people claim that the closer they get to these figures, the more intense the feeling becomes, like something is urging them to stop, to give in to the unknown, to let a darkness swallow them whole. As terrifying as these accounts are, there's still no concrete explanation for what's really happening on Route 76. Some say it's a combination of all these things: the curse, the supernatural entity, the souls of the lost, creating a perfect storm of fear and confusion. Others argue that it's all just a series of coincidences, a collection
of strange events that have been blown out of proportion by those who want to believe in something darker. But no matter what the truth may be, Route 76 remains one of the most terrifying roads in the country. And for those brave enough to drive it, the mysteries of the highway are something they must confront head on. For some, the fear of the unknown is enough to keep them away. They know the stories, they've heard the whispers, and they choose to take a different route, one that doesn't lead them into the heart of darkness. But for others, the pull of the highway is irresistible. They drive down Route 76, daring the darkness to come for them, hoping that they'll be the ones to uncover its secrets. But even those who make it through unscathed can't shake the feeling that something is watching, waiting. There are those who say that once you've driven Route 76, once you've crossed its threshold, you'll never be the same. The road leaves a mark on you, a shadow that follows you long after you've left the highway behind.
There's no way to know for sure what lies hidden on Route 76. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's the work of something far more ancient. And still others claim it's the souls of the lost, forever trapped in the grip of the highway. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. This road is unlike any other. It holds a dark secret, a secret that has remained hidden for centuries. And if you're brave enough to venture down it, you might just find out what lies in the darkness. But be warned, once you've driven Route 76, there's no going back. The road has a way of claiming those who dare to cross it, and it's a place where the unknown will always find a way to reach out and touch you. Whether it's a curse, a supernatural force, or the souls of the lost, Route 76 is a place where darkness reigns, and the truth may be more terrifying than anyone could ever imagine.